Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher. Welcome back to Studio G. And I'm sitting behind the 9-inch South Bend lathe that I bought recently. And this will be a two-part video. So you're watching part one, which is episode or tips number 1059. Make sure you watch 1060. So in 1059, part one, I will be talking about grinding the tailstock center in the headstock and talking about the grinder and how to set it up and all of that. It'll be a long video. That's why I'm breaking it into two. And in part two, I will do the actual grinding of the center. So stick with me, watch the whole thing, leave a comment, and I hope to see you also in part two. So what I'm going to show you now really is ancient technology. You will never have to do this, and I'll tell you why, but you'll find the demonstration interesting nevertheless. But in the olden days, we did not have live ball bearing centers. We used a dead center in both the headstock and the tailstock. But the tailstock center had to be lubricated, typically with white or red lead or high pressure lubricant that was kept here in the little dauber hole, and there's what's left of the dauber that you saw me dig out in one other video in the past. But often if the machinist wasn't careful, didn't have it well lubricated, or didn't back it off as it got hot, because these would get very hot, they would literally burn the end off of the center like that. Sometimes the work would just fall down on the bed. So this could be thrown away or reground. Now I'm going to regrind it because that's what the demonstration's all about. But only an insane person would do this, because you can buy one of these on eBay for $10 including shipping. So why would you want to grind your own? And these are 60-degree centers, by the way, and this is a number 2 Morse taper. Furthermore, for $15 you can buy a center like this that will have a carbide tip on it, and it will last you 10 lifetimes. So I'm just telling you why you wouldn't want to do this, having a little fun explaining it. So these are the two centers that came with this machine. They had some rust on them, and I've de-rusted them. And this one is usable, it just doesn't look very good. And they don't need to come down to a lethal point. Leave a little bit of a flat on the end, and they're less delicate. But as you can see, this one will require a lot of grinding in order to do that and true it up. And of course, we will put it in the headstock in order to do that. Now let's talk just a little bit about the tool post grinder itself. Okay, this is a Dumour tool post grinder, and it's a fairly small one. They did make a smaller one, which is called the Tom Thumb. This takes a 4-inch wheel. As you can see, I really need a new wheel, but I think we can get through the job. And this particular model of Dumour is 44-011, and I'm going to show you the catalog picture of that presently. But I'd like to ask you viewers out there a couple of questions, and please answer this if you can in the comments. First of all, tell me if you own a tool post grinder of any size, and tell me the make and so on. And by the way, even though this is a Dumour made in Racine, they have changed the name of the company. It doesn't come to me right now, but they have moved out of Racine over closer to La Crosse. I'm not sure exactly where. They were most famous for making motors of all kinds and little drill presses and things like that, but they still make a complete line of tool post grinders that mount on the lathe tool post, as you can see right here, and this is still sitting here loose. Now, one other question for you. Now, I just asked you if you actually own one of these, but even if you don't own one, these are quite pricey, and I mean pricey. So I want you in the comments to give me a guesstimate of what you think one of these would cost brand new, and they still make this model, only it would be fully guarded around the belt. When this was made probably in the 50s or 60s, it was strictly be careful, you're on your own Responsibility is what it's all about. So tell me what the price is, and I'm going to tell you at the end of this video what the current list price is. You'll be shocked. Okay, I took this picture off of the vintage machinery site. It's in 1950 or 1960 Dumour Catalog, and there it is, Model 44. Notice that it does not have a guard around the belt. If you look at their newer catalog or look on the MSC, you will see that there has been some modifications, including a nice guard around the belts. And there's all the specifications if you are interested. In the back of the Dumour catalog is a grinder selector chart so that you could determine what lathe you have and what actual grinder you need to order. So looking here under 9-inch, and I've got it highlighted, and then down a little bit lower you can see, and I'll zoom in on it, that's a South Bend 9-inch, and it calls for one of 3 sizes, and there is the number 44 at the bottom. So this is the correct grinder for a 9-inch machine, and I believe it'll work on the 10-inch as well, yes. This is a 7,000 RPM motor that's under no load, belt driven as we talked about before, and there's an inline switch here, and it needs a new cord that where it goes into the motor. I don't know how many tools I have that need new cords, and they always fail right where the strain reliever is or should be. Now, the rotation of this is in this direction. Can you see that little arrow? Barely. So that is the way that the wheel will revolve, and we must run the machine in reverse at about a medium speed. I'm not sure exactly what, but I'm going to run it at the slowest speed in direct drive. The motor itself is sealed ball bearing, so there's no lubrication needed, but on the main shaft here, which is a very precision shaft with expensive bearings, they're not just bearings that you can buy on eBay, but there is an oiler right here, and I've already oiled it. Dumour did supply special oil for their grinders, but I'm just using 20 weight. Now I will be grinding this by using the compound rest method. So in effect it's like turning a taper. Actually we're grinding a taper by the compound rest method. They are 60 degrees center, so I will be setting the compound for 30 degrees with the crank back here, and it'll be hand fed with the carriage itself locked. Now we have to set the grinder on center. That is, the center of this shaft should be equal or set at the height of a center. Now how do we achieve that? Well, there's a bolt right here that I'm touching. You can't see it, but when that is loose, a fella is able to raise or lower the grinder to get it on center. So I will be doing that here in a minute, and then locking both this, and as I said, I have to set the compound. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to take the grinder off of the compound so that you can see how it's fastened. So I'm loosening up this bolt, and I'm just going to slide it off, and as you can see on the bottom here, I hope, if I can get this positioned, that I think I'll take this off and explain it to you. Okay, this is the T-bolt that is supplied by Dumour, and it's certainly going to vary depending on your T-slot dimensions, but this is semi-universal, and it does happen to fit just perfectly, and if the slot is bigger, this can be turned a little bit. And here's another one I made for another lathe that doesn't fit in here properly, but you may have to make yourself a T-nut similar to what you would use to hold down an Loris tool post. But this works just fine, and the diameter is 3/8. And this is perhaps a better view of the adjustment for height. So there's quite a range. It looks like about 2 inches. when we're using it at one of the lower settings. By the way, if you do not have one of these beautiful little South Bend tool post wrenches, find yourself one on eBay. I particularly like them, 3/8 on both ends. So I'm going to set this for, well, I said 30 degrees, but now that I'm looking at this, it will be 60 degrees, and I have to read it right here, not on the back side or not on this side. And I've got plenty of light, and I got to wear my optivisor, and there I'm on 60 degrees, and I will lock the two bolts. And now I will take the tool grinder itself and mount it on this screw. And I'll put the washers and the nut on here, and I don't know why there's 3 washers, but that's what I'm going to use. And I will tighten it down, but not quite yet. Okay, I'm tightening it down. Good and snug. It's not going to go anywhere, but remember it's still turning on this shaft. So next I want to set it on center. Well, that was a two-handed operation, so I'm not exactly showing you how I made the adjustment, but as you can see, I am on center. I'm running that tailstock center right into the center hole of the grinder shaft. Now this could be done on the headstock as well, with the center put into the spindle, but there I am, and I locked that bolt that I just talked to. I better show you where that bolt is. Okay, this is the lock bolt. I have changed my mind. In order to expedite the part 2, instead of using this totally ruined center, I'm just going to recondition this one that will not require a lot of grinding. So I'm going to install it in the headstock. And first of all, note that I put a thread protector on here so that there's no chance of damaging the spindle thread or even getting grit into the thread. So that's tightened, and I've already cleaned this. If you got fat fingers, don't get them stuck in there. You have to call the fire department. And then we need a sleeve, and I've already cleaned that thoroughly inside and out. And then finally the center itself, wiped clean, put it on, and tap it home with your lead hammer. You see, this is a pretty complicated setup, and there's just one last thing to do, and that is I've loosened this nut again, and I have to rotate the entire grinder such that the shaft, if you can visualize the center line of the shaft, needs to be parallel to this angle on the center. Now, to some extent, that is going to be just a matter of my good judgment and eyeballing it. I can't think of any good way to measure it, but any inaccuracies will be taken up by me dressing the wheel in compliance with the center. If you don't know what that means, just hang on and I'll show you. So that's the final position of the tool post grinder, and it's locked down. If I can, I'm going to give you a bird's eye view straight down to show you how I have adjusted the wheel in compliance with the center itself. Well, I hope there's enough light for you to see it, but there is the grinding wheel pretty much against the warm center. Can you see that? It is, if it's not perfect, and it's probably not, dressing will bring it into final accuracy. I know I'm going to catch heck for this, but look at that wire. I think I might even be seeing a little bare copper in there, but maybe it's just the color of the insulation. So that's kind of scary. Couple that with the fact that some moron 50 years ago cut off the plug ground. But that means that this was probably made after about 1960, since it has a plug, even though somebody jerked it out of there. A jerk jerked it out of there. But you're going to say this is too dangerous, this, and the fact that it's not grounded. But in fact, it is grounded because I do have a 3-wire plug on the motor of the South Bend lathe itself. So the whole unit is indeed grounded. Sparkies, tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, so that bolt is tight, and I want to show you how the belt tension works. It's just spring-loaded. There's a torsion spring in here like a mousetrap. And it's a flat belt, as you can see, unguarded. But should a fella get his finger in here, it's not going to cut it off. It's just going to smash it and give you a good black nail, and probably even worse, because what would happen if your finger got in here, that is going to jerk up like that and save you. At least that's my opinion. But keep your fingers out of there. I'm not really ready to grind. I have not protected the bed on the machine yet, nor have I dressed the wheel. But here's the dry run and the gist of how this is going to be done. With the machine running in reverse, as I just mentioned, wear a full face shield when you do this. And I'll turn the grinder on. And then I've already locked the carriage. Can you hear me? And I will simply be feeding like this. And the depth of my cut, of course, will be with the cross slide crank. So to get the general idea of what I'm going to do, and I believe I'm going to have to take the center out of the spindle in order to set up the dresser. Okay, let's talk about wheel dresser. So this is the genuine Dumour. You can see the colors match. And there's a little V here and a set screw such that you could hold it to your work like that. But even though I would, see, that's not very sturdy. I don't like that at all. Plus, even if I put it in back gears, there's going to be a little bit of play. Well, not a whole lot, but there is a little bit. So that's not going to work at all. Now notice the diamond nib right here. And it can be repositioned here or here, depending on your application. So that's the actual diamond itself. I hope my wife doesn't see that, because it's quite a bit larger than the diamond I gave her for our engagement. Let me show you some other examples. And the other thing I do not like about the Dumour is that I need to present the diamond nib pretty well perpendicular to the wheel, and I can't do that by fastening it onto the center or the spindle. But here's one that I made up years ago, and there's the diamond nib. This could be held in a collet or a 3-jaw chuck, and then this rotated or turned until you get the angle that you want. But we're back to holding it into a chuck where there's a little bit of play. I do not like that one bit, and I'm not going to use this. Let me show you what I'm actually going to use. Okay, in 2021, Trenton Hudson gave this to me, a belated thanks to him. I don't believe I've used it yet. Quite heavy, so I had to make up a clamp to go inside here, because the one that came with this would fit the 10-inch lathe, but not the 9-inch. But anyway, this will be clamped to the bed like that, and this can be adjusted in and out wherever you need it, and raised and lowered and rotated. So it's pretty universal and super heavy, and it will take up the vibration. Sometimes you can get vibrations even when you're just dressing a wheel. Again, there's the tiny little diamond nib. I'll set that up and show you. I meant to show you this earlier, but notice that there's very little clearance here between the compound and the belt and the pulley. Now, it is going to work, but it is a pretty close fit, isn't it? Two things I forgot to mention. This is the actual clamp that should go underneath, but it was too long the way I'm holding it here. I could have ground it off or machined it off, but I know that it'll fit the 10-inch, so I'm not going to mess with that. Here's one I made years ago that's super sturdy, and I had forgotten where I used it. Luckily, I had good enough sense to mark it fits the closing. So there's all kinds of possibilities for holding your diamond dresser, as you can see. And finally, I can adjust this for the correct height on center, so I brought it right up to the center itself, and then I will rotate it so that it is in this position, perpendicular to the wheel, and then there's a little set screw here. It's a two-handed operation. I'll do that off camera. All right, let's do a dry run. You can see that I can move it in and out minute amounts with the cross slide, and I'll actually be feeding it like this with the compound. And then I also notice there's very little clearance right here, but it does clear. There's always that problem with clearances. That's why you need to do a dry run like I just showed you and make sure that everything is going to clear and work for you. One other thing I need to do on this machine sooner or later, somebody stuck a brass screw in here. That's the way I bought it, but I'm going to put a piece of cat gut in there. It's a shame that somebody's kitty had to give up its life so I can splice my belt. Okay, at the beginning of the video, I asked you to put in the comments what you thought this machine would cost if you ordered it from MSC today. And you're right, it's expensive. It's $2,835 plus tax and shipping, so this would cost over $3,000 brand new. Are you going to order one tomorrow? You could order 500 centers for that. No, 300 centers. Well, it's 91 degrees in here, so I'm going to quit for the day. This is the end of part 1, so make sure you watch part 2, number 1060, for the exciting dressing of the wheel and the actual grinding itself. I bet you can't wait. And that's a standalone video that you may enjoy and you can review from time to time should you ever do this, which is a 1 in a million shot. So long for now, and I'll see you in part 2. Okay, here's the answer to the trivia question that I gave to you at the beginning of the video. I asked you to guess the price of that model 44-011. Now this is a screenshot of the MSC current catalog, and that grinder sells for $2,835 plus tax and shipping, so it would come to about $3,000 for that grinder. Are you going to order one?